A video published by the Ukrainian Navy shows a Russian tank being destroyed by a group of Ukrainian Marines that claim to have taken out 131 enemy personnel the week prior. The 35th Marine Corps Brigade, which originally posted the footage on its social media channels on Saturday, said they obliterated the tank after successful aerial reconnaissance and artillery work because it was getting on the guys' nerves. According to the latest figures from the Ukrainian Armed Forces, 3,675 Russian tanks have been destroyed since the invasion of Ukraine began 14 months ago, while the Russian Defense Ministry has claimed its forces have taken out 8,809 enemy tanks. Ukraine's military has repeatedly shared footage online of Russian tanks being targeted, and many Western analysts say Russia has sustained heavy tank losses at Ukraine's hands over the course of the war. In the footage, a T-80 tank can be seen firing to its left in an area of raised buildings and rubble. A caption in Ukrainian said it had directed fire at our position. It then moves back along the path it had trod into the dirt, before appearing to attempt to turn around. At that point, it is struck from above and is covered in a cloud of smoke, before continuing to move away. The T-80 is a Russian main battle tank that was designed under the Soviet Union and first entered service in 1976. While it has been involved in successful military campaigns such as the First Chechen War, the tank has been vulnerable to close-range attacks using Western-supplied shoulder-mounted missile launchers. Even though upgraded models of the tank have been credited for their mobility and speed, they have also suffered from their main gun having a limited vertical range. A version of the T-80 tank is used by Ukrainian forces, which have also put into service tanks they have successfully captured without destroying. It is unclear where the footage was taken, however in a previous update the 35 Marine Corps Brigade said it had been destroying the equipment and live power of the enemy on the approaches to Vuhledar, a town in the west of the Donetsk Oblast, part of the contested Donbass region in the east of the embattled nation. The area sits on the front line in the east, between the occupied cities of Donetsk and Mariupol. According to the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, on Saturday Vuhledar was subject to shelling from the Russian military. The unit, which was formed in September 2018, said it had, in concert with other brigades, been able to retake complete control of the settlements on the path towards Vuhledar, where it came up against the 155th Separate Marine Brigade, a Russian naval infantry group formed in 2009, and which has seen action previously in Chechnya. One of the 35th Marine Corps Brigade's commanders, named only as Sergei, said it had taken more than 20 enemy Marines captive and that there was a strong sense of pride. On April 21, it said in the 7 days prior, along with the Russian military personnel the Corps had killed, it had also successfully hit a tank, an armored vehicle, several mortar and artillery positions, and a radio communications unit. Newsweek was unable to verify these figures. Ukraine eliminated 1,370 Russian soldiers over the weekend, death toll now at 186,000. More than 1,000 Russian troops were killed on the battlefield in Ukraine over the weekend, according to the Ukrainian military. The General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces said at least 680 Russian soldiers were liquidated Saturday and an additional 690 troops were killed Sunday. The clashes on the Ukrainian battlefield in the past 2 days resulted in 1,370 deaths among Russian soldiers, bringing the death toll of Russian military personnel up to 186,420 since the war began more than a year ago. The Ukrainian army also said it destroyed more pieces of Russian military equipment over the weekend, including 7 tanks, 5 armored personnel vehicles APVs, 10 artillery systems, 4 anti-aircraft warfare systems, and 4 operational tactical level unmanned aerial vehicles UAVs. Since Feb. 24, 2022, Russia has lost thousands of military equipment in Ukraine, including 3,675 tanks, 7,131 APVs, 2,837 artillery systems, 289 anti-aircraft warfare systems and 2,402 UAVs. In its latest situation update, the Ukrainian Armed Forces accused Russia of continuing to violate international humanitarian law by launching a new round of attacks against the war-torn country. The Ukrainian military said Russia carried out 28 airstrikes and around 10 rocket strikes against its various troop positions and civilian settlements Sunday, injuring civilians and damaging residential buildings and other civilian infrastructure. Russia shelled several civilian settlements in the Ukrainian regions of Donetsk, Kharkiv, Zaporizhia and Kherson, according to the update. The Ukrainian military suggested that the Russian armed forces and the Russian mercenary group Wagner are attempting to find someone to blame for their failures on the battlefield. Due to the blame game between the two factions on the Russian side, a fight broke out in the Stanich-Luhanska settlement in the temporarily occupied region of Luhansk, Ukrainian officials said. The argument allegedly escalated into a shootout between the Russian military and the Wagner group, resulting in deaths on both sides. The Russian military also reportedly continues to build makeshift medical facilities in its temporarily held Ukrainian territories as the number of wounded soldiers mounts. In the Ukrainian settlement of Mistki in the Luhansk region, Russian forces converted a local school into a military hospital to treat its wounded personnel, according to the Ukraine army. But Ukraine assessed that all Russian military facilities on the battlefield suffer from a shortage of medicines and bandages. As its combat losses continued to pile up, Russia launched a new advertising campaign to recruit more men for its invasion of Ukraine. The Russian Defense Ministry released a video on Telegram showing 3 men calling on Russians to become real men by joining the war in Ukraine, CNN reported. It also highlighted the financial benefits of joining the Russian military. However, the British Defense Ministry suggested that the new recruitment campaign is unlikely to help fulfill Russia's goal of recruiting 400,000 volunteers. Shootout occurred between Russian and Wagner Group soldiers in Stanich-Luhanska, General Staff. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reported a fight and a shootout between the Russian military and mercenaries of the Wagner Group in occupied Stanich-Luhanska. Source: Summary of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Quote, having no significant achievements on the battlefield, the military personnel of the Russian armed forces and representatives of the Wagner Group are increasingly trying to find those responsible for this. Responsibility for their own tactical miscalculations and losses are shifted to each other. As a result, recently in the settlement of Stanich-Luhanska, Luhansk Oblast, there was a fight between military personnel of the Russian armed forces and mercenaries of the Wagner Group, which turned into a shootout. As a result of the conflict, there are dead on both sides. Details: the General Staff also reports that in the settlement of Mistki, Luhansk Oblast, Russian invaders have set up a local school as a military hospital. There are a large number of wounded Russians there. In addition, there is a large shortage of medicines and dressings in all medical institutions of the occupiers, the report says.